Hey guys, welcome back to Loft Sports. I'm Tyler.
I'm Seth.
Today we're going to be shooting our ACC video, so let's dive right into it with our big headlines.
Yeah, we got the big headlines. The ACC, not real big headline news. It's just more of just kind of setting the landscape for the year. I mean, Clemson, can they continue their dominance? Is anyone else really going to be a factor? The Coastal's wide open. Is there a team that one of us trusts to actually take control of that division? You'll have to stay tuned to find out. And then number 3, returning Mac Brown at North Carolina. Kind of a reach for a storyline, but I mean, it could be a big deal. It could work out for him. He's in a talent-rich area. He's got the success there in the past. It'll at least be intriguing. I mean, coming from where I've grown up, Nebraska's had a lot of games against Texas. I'm bringing up some painful memories right now. But I'm curious to see how he does there.
Yeah, and I think in addition to Mac Brown, there's a lot of first and second year coaches. You got Miami and Manny Diaz, and then Willie Taggart at Florida State in his second year. Georgia Tech starting with a new coach. So there's a few. Yeah, there's a lot of new coaches out there. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Let's go ahead now and look at the biggest non-conference games that are going to shape the ACC this year. We touched on this if you checked out our SEC video. If not, that's a must-watch. But A&M versus Clemson, this time it's in Death Valley. It was a close game last year. Jimbo at his second year at A&M, but this time they got to go to Clemson. Yeah,
I mean, we touched on in the other one too. It's going to be a good game to see kind of where Jimbo's at. It's going to be a great measuring stick for his program. It's going to be a butt whooping, but it'll be a good barometer for him.
Yeah.
And then 2 other ACC, SEC matchups here. You got Miami against Florida. Florida State versus Florida is our other non-conference games kind of rounded out. Those are kind of the big ones. How do you see those going for those that might not catch our SEC video?
I think Florida's going to win both of them. I think the Florida State game might be a little closer than the Miami game, although Miami has something to prove, but they do have a new coach. They're kind of starting over. The culture's not really going to be different because the culture is always the same at Miami. It's the U, and is what it is. But I think Florida State, more so year 2 for Willie Taggart. He's got to take a step in the right direction. Last year wasn't terrible, but that's a big deal for the Florida State fans. The Miami rivalry is bitter, but the Florida State-Florida rivalry is intense too, so he's got to win that game.
I mean, Willie Taggart, he's got to show improvements, and he can't get blown out in that game. He's got to at least make it close. The team's got to put up a fight. I think they're going to lose, but I think for his sake it has to be a loss that the fan base is okay with.
Yeah. Other than that, there's really not a lot of ACC non-conference games. Virginia and Virginia Tech both travel to Notre Dame, so that might be somewhat worthy of a mention. And then you have your end-of-the-year crossover rivals with the SEC. Louisville plays Kentucky, Clemson and South Carolina, Georgia Tech, Georgia, et cetera, et cetera. But there's not any that are like, whoa, this is what we need to focus on.
Right. So some of these other conferences meeting up, you have top 10 matchups, potential top 15. Not really these other than the ones that we've mentioned. It just is what it is this year for the ACC.
Yeah, it's kind of Clemson and everybody else until proven otherwise. All right, so the biggest games in the conference that are going to shape the divisions, for those of you that don't know, it's the Atlantic and the Coastal. I think the biggest game in the ACC, which it usually is every year, that's Florida State and Clemson. This usually decides the Atlantic. I don't think it's going to be much of a contest this year. I think Florida State is actually going to Clemson this year. I'd have to double check that, but that's usually the big game in the Atlantic.
Clemson does get FSU at home, so that's going to be, I mean, that's a really tough place to try to beat a very, very good Clemson team. I mean, I'm just not big on Taggart. I know it's year 2. He's got his culture in place. It's okay to have, a little bit of a losing year, a down year from expectations when you're trying to establish a new culture. But I'm just not a big Taggart fan. I don't really like his in-game decisions, some of the play calling and different things that I saw last year. I'm just not that excited. He's going to have to prove it to me, is what I'm saying.
There's no question he has the talent, though. So if he
that's
can
what I'm saying.
Succeed, he's got the players.
You can't really have an excuse. It's not like other programs around the country. You're Florida State. I mean, throw a stone in the backyard, you got endless 4-stars there. I mean, there shouldn't be a reason for you to not have success, or at least not be able to play close against your rivals. Or at least your division rivals. That's the main thing. He's going to have to take a step up this year. that seat's going to get pretty warm.
It will definitely get warm, especially if he loses this next game, which is Florida State and Miami. It's not a divisional game, but I don't think many Florida State fans expect them to go down to Clemson and win in his second year.
No, I think they just want a good showing. I think they want to feel good about the team's performance, knowing what Clemson's doing right now. Heck, if you lose by 2 touchdowns there, that's not the end of the world.
It's not, but I think what I'm saying is they're big. They are expecting them to beat Miami because Miami is in a first-year coach. That's an intense rivalry. So if they're not expecting him to beat Clemson, but they are expecting him to beat Miami.
I'll agree with that. I don't necessarily see that happening, but I agree with that. That's a game that he's gonna have to win, considering these other games on the schedule that he's probably not going to show at least a progress, because Miami's going to be a ranked team. A lot of people really like them. They're going to be a very solid team. It'd be a big win for them.
Yeah, and then probably the biggest game in the Coastal, it's usually the deciding game, Miami and Virginia Tech. I think this one, it's in South Florida this year, so Miami probably gets a little bit of the lean there, but it's still probably the deciding game in the Coastal for most people.
Yeah, those are going to be my top two, as we'll get to in the standings. I do have Miami winning that game, if that's any sort of sneak peek to possibly where I'm going divisional-wise. But Virginia Tech's kind of been, for me anyway, they've been down the last couple years. They really haven't had some of those great games or really wins that you normally see from them. The defense has taken a step back. I think the overall talent on the squad has possibly taken a step back too. Some of that might have to do with the resurgence of some of these other ACC teams, but I think that's going to be the decider. I do think Miami wins that game, though.
All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the standings now. We're going to start in the Atlantic. My last place team is actually who Notre Dame opens with on Labor Day night. A program that has really taken a downfall over the last couple seasons. Went from a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback to one of the worst teams in the conference, and that's Louisville.
Yeah, I have them as 7-2. It's really important for programs to capitalize on those, I'm going to call it once-a-decade talents, to at least keep the status quo going. But didn't really work out for Louisville. I think they're pretty dreadful, and I don't really see them doing much. Not much of a factor in the conference. Probably not winning more than a couple games, to be honest.
Well, it's really rough when an alumni like Braum is the front runner for a coaching job, and he stays at a place like Purdue rather than comes home to coach. So that's a little bit eye-opening and a little concerning for a Louisville team that has really, since the early 2000s, come a long way, but that's not a good sign when you can't get one of your own to come home. But number 6 for me, I have Wake Forest. This team actually won 7 games last year. I think they will take a little bit of a step back just because I have some other teams passing them. But I think Wake Forest will go 5-7, just miss out on a bowl. Might play a factor in an upset here or there because they can score a lot of points, but I don't see them doing much better than that.
Wake's got the capability to give someone a tough Saturday. I just don't see it happening too often. I have them as number 6 as well. They had a 7-5 year, which for Wake, that's probably a good year for them. I don't know what else they'd really be expecting. I do think they do take a step back, though. I think some of the other teams in the division have gotten better, or at least have shown over the last couple of years they're able to handle success a little bit more. I think Wake falls back down to right where they should be there at bottom 2 in that division.
Number 5 for me is North Carolina State, another team that's taking a step back.
Interesting.
They've got some talent. Dave Dorn is not a bad coach. We actually live just outside, or about an hour south of Raleigh, so it's kind of a local team for us. The media's kind of excited. I don't think NC State's going to be that good this year. I got them at 6-6. I think they qualify for a bowl, but coming off of 2 9-4 seasons, I think that's a pretty significant drop for them.
I think that's kind of a peak for him, for that program.
I think it is.
Interesting. My 5th team, I have BC there. BC is a team that not too many people want to play. They definitely have the capability to upset you. They can run the ball. They play good defense. They're physical. You feel it the day after. So not a lot of teams want to come up against that. I just think they're missing talent in key areas. don't really ever trust Boston College that much. They always surprise me when they have a good year. It might be a little bit of a bias against them. I don't know, but I have them as 5th for me.
Okay. My number 4 is actually BC. I think BC goes 6-6 also, but I think because of they beat NC State in my prediction, I have them just ahead. BC's a tough team. It gets awfully cold up there in Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts in November, so it's a tough team to go win games in the latter third of the year, but they just don't have the talent. They always play Notre Dame tough, so they do scare me, but I just don't think, and when you look at this conference, I don't think they stack up much better than middle of the road.
Fair enough. For me, my number 4 team, I have it as Syracuse.
Ooh.
Syracuse surprised some people last year. They had a pretty good year by Syracuse's standards.
10 wins is very good by their standards.
Yeah, that's probably, I mean, I don't know how many times it's happened, but I can probably count it on this hand, I'd imagine.
Donovan McNabb days, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's not basketball season just yet.
That's right.
When I look at Syracuse, they've had a solid couple years. They do lose their starting quarterback. They lose their leading rusher. 4 of their top 5 receivers are gone. They're not a program that could replenish talent like some of the other ones, so I think they kind of take a step back, fall down to 4.
My number 3 team is actually Syracuse.
Okay.
They do lose their starter, but the guy that's replacing him is actually better. He was highly recruited. He played against Notre Dame. Now, we actually had a lot of success against Syracuse, but I think this is a team that I think they do replenish a little bit of that talent. I don't think they'll be as good. I don't see them winning 10 games again.
Right.
But it is not easy to go up to the Carrier Dome and win.
Yeah.
I've seen teams like LSU go up there. Clemson lost there last year.
Clemson's
Clemson's got to go there again this year. I'm not saying that they'll lose that this time around, but I think Syracuse wins 8 games, 4-4 in the ACC. Not great, but for their standards, that's pretty darn good. Dino Babin's probably the best name of any head coach in college football. If you like the Flintstones, it just sounds like a Flintstone character. So I got Syracuse finishing 3rd at 8-4.
My 3rd place team is Florida State. I'm not too high on them. I think they have better talent than some of these other teams, which is why I put them where they are. I'm not a big fan of Willie Taggart. I think he's going to be a coach that's only there 3 or 4 years, so he's really not impressing me much. A lot of talent. No excuse not to have success there. I think 3rd place is probably not where Florida State wants to finish, but I think their fans are expecting more, but that's just where I have them this year.
Okay. I actually have the Noles coming in at number 2, but I have them finishing with the same record as Syracuse, 8-4. I think they will go 5-3 in the conference. That 4th loss will be to Florida at the end of the season. Florida State, there's no question. They should have the talent. They should have quarterbacks, receivers, running backs, defensive players that can win national championships. It's been done a couple different occasions there, but where Clemson is right now is on a completely different level, and I think we're starting to see that gap widen even further. At least when Clemson a couple years ago when they had Deshaun Watson, Florida State was still competitive with them. Now that Jimbo Fisher has taken his talents to College Station, Florida State is drastically pulling in the other direction, and Clemson is even getting better. So I think it's going to be tough for Florida State it's going to be a while before they're back on top. I got them at number 2.
My number 2 team, I have NC State, which I think you have
I have
all
them
the way
all the way down to 5. Yeah.
I mean, they've put together a couple 9-win years. I like what Dave Doran's done there. He's built a good culture. The schedules, to me, I mean, I've got it here. They play at home, Syracuse, so they avoid going to the Carrier Dome. They have NC at home. They do get Clemson at home, too, for any sort of a potential upset. They've played them close the last
Clemson
couple
has
years.
lost some games recently that they shouldn't have. Now, Trevor Lawrence is a better quarterback than what they've had with Deshaun. Even Deshaun, who's a great quarterback. But
Trevor Lawrence is a better quarterback than what my Vikings have.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the real deal. But I mean, NC State, I like their schedule a little bit more. I think it's favorable. They've shown that they can go from a 9-win year to another 9-win year. I just kind of like where they're going. I know they lose their starting quarterback, but I think if you're going to lose a starting quarterback, the number one way to replace it is with a good culture that wins and is tough to beat. I don't think NC State's a team that a lot of people want to see on their schedule. So I got them finishing 2nd. I think they're going to pull off a couple wins.
Number 1, Clemson. Same thing
Really?
with the SEC West. Don't waste any time here. 12-0, 8-0 in the conference. They're on a different level.
Really, the only thing you can say, they got 8 returning offensive starters and the best player in the country, who's my pick to win the Heisman, Trevor Lawrence. I mean,
reaching there.
Yeah, it's a real big reach there. If anything, people are starting to talk about they lost all that talent on the defensive line. Clemson's been recruiting at just as a high level as Alabama, Georgia, everyone else in the country. They have the best defensive coordinator in the country. If you're going to lose talent, elite quarterback, elite defense, elite coaching, they're going to be right back there in the mix. I mean, I don't see them losing the game there. I don't see any team in this ACC that can really even pose a threat.
Yeah, if they played in the SEC or even the Big Ten, I might say, hey, they're not that far ahead of everybody, but the ACC is a basketball conference, and Clemson is a football team playing in a basketball conference.
Yeah, they're just taking advantage of it right now. I mean, it is what it is. Let's move on.
Yep.
You like my robot?
All right, let's move on now to what is probably the most wide open division in all of college football.
Before we get into that, I'm looking at mine for the Coastal. I'm looking at yours. It's gonna
This
be
could be fun. All right, it's number 7 in the division, Duke. This is not basketball. They don't reload. They've lost their quarterback. Daniel Jones is now a New York Giant, and if you're a Giant fan, I know you love that pick in the NFL draft. So Duke, I think it's going to be a rough year. They have to replace a quarterback. Duke is not a school that reloads. I think they go 3-9, finish last in the division.
So my 7th is actually going to be Georgia Tech. They're coming in with a whole new system. They're going from a triple option system where we're not just talking about running. We're talking about
3 yards in a cloud of dust.
literally like you see the military teams run, wishbone, wing tee, triple option football. They're going from that to more of a kind of up-tempo, spread, passing the ball. That never works. I mean, in college football, these teams that have an identity, it takes time to recruit against that identity. I saw it happen with my team, Nebraska. We went from running option quarterbacks, everything like that. Bill Callahan came in, switched the whole system. I'm not saying every team's going to fail at that like we did, but I just don't think it works right away. I think you need 2 or 3 years, so I got them as 7th. I think it's going to be a tough transition.
That's fair. My number 6 team is North Carolina. I think they'll make it to a bowl game, but I don't see them doing much better than that. They got some teams that come home to their place. Again, this Coastal is wide open, so on any given Saturday, pick a name out of a hat and you might have a winner.
Right.
But I think Mac Brown returning, he's been a little out of touch. I think North Carolina finishes 6th.
Yeah, I mean, I got UNC 6 as well. That might be the only similarity we have here. I mean, it just is what it is. They haven't had the best couple of years. They had a lot of close losses last year that could have gone either way. The crazy thing is I was looking at them when we were was doing my research for this. They only were outgained by an average of 19 yards in their games last year, which I thought was weird. Their offense moves the ball, and they have enough talent to maybe make things work. I just don't see it happen in year 1 for Mac Brown. Bowl game, very possible, but I have them 6th in the division.
And you were living back home in Nebraska still for the most part the last couple of years. But Larry Fedora had North Carolina offensively very good. They just had a turnover problem. Mac Brown might be able to fix that, but we'll see.
We'll see.
Coming in at number 5 for me is the defending Coastal champ, Pitt. Pat Narduzzi's done a phenomenal job. I don't know... You kind of say that with a grain of salt because they were 7-5 last year. They just happened to win the division. But he's done a good job. I mean, it is Pitt. Pitt's not an elite program. I mean, they've had some great talent there over the years, but they've been very average for several years.
Yeah, it's Pitt, not Penn State.
That's right. I think 6-6 feels right for me, and I got them at 5th.
So my 5th team, I have Duke. You have them as your 7th. I have them. You probably could have flip-flopped them. I don't know with this Coastal, to be honest. I know they're replacing a first-round draft pick, if you want to call him a first-round talent. Who knows? Maybe he's going to have a good career. Anyway, they're losing their starting quarterback, but it seems like they always have a good quarterback waiting in the wings. David Cutcliffe's been one of the best finders and scouters of talent. And he's, honestly, I hate to even mention this name, but he's kind of got a little bit of Mike Riley in him from his days at Oregon State. He's able to find a quarterback, groom him for the pros, everything like that.
You're not a big Mike Riley fan? I wonder why.
Yeah, seriously.
All right, number 4, I have Georgia Tech. Now this is really interesting because I actually have Georgia Tech finishing 5-7, so they won't make it to a bowl game. But in conference alignment, they'll win 4 games, so they finish higher than the other teams. Agree with what you said earlier. It's going to be extremely difficult to transition from a triple option team to a spread team. Yeah. But I think Georgia Tech is going to be a little bit sneaky. I think they're going to be dangerous, and teams might overlook that going in. They play a couple Thursday night games too, which are always crapshoots in these ACC Thursday night games. I think Georgia Tech finds a way to finish 4th in the division. Fair enough.
For me, I got Pitt number 4. I kind of changed this around. I had him at number 1 at one point, had him at 2. I settled on 4th. I'm not going to say Narduzzi's peak there. They're a tough team, but they were 7-5 last year. And when you look, they don't really have that great of talent compared to some of these other teams in the division. I think they're going to finish 4th. I think they could very well have the same record and be kind of the same caliber of team, just finish 4th in their division this year. I'm not expecting too much from Pitt. I know they're defending division champs, but I got them sliding down to 4th this year.
All right, number 3, I have Miami. This might be a little bit of a surprise to some people, but first-year coach, you're always hitting the reset button. Quarterback play has been a concern down there. The talent is there, there's no question, but Miami, I think it's going to take him a year or two to kind of realize and get things going in the right direction. Miami is dangerous, and on any given Saturday they could, I don't know if they could beat Clemson, but they could beat a lot of teams, especially in this conference. So a lot of people say they could be a dark horse team to win 10 or 11 games, but I think 8-4 sounds right to me.
Number 3 for me, I have Virginia there. I think Virginia's, I don't know how, really, but they've done a great job of winning games. They've done a great job of being a tough team to play. They have a good culture. They're just one of those tough teams that finds a way, and in this conference, as wide open as it is, just having that mental toughness, that togetherness to work. I don't want to use the cliche work as a team, but they put it together when they need to, come up with big plays. I do think they're a clear-cut 3. I think there's a clear 2 in this division for me. The rest is kind of wide open, but I got Virginia finishing 3rd.
Okay. My number 2 team, and if you're following, this is going to surprise you who I have at number 1. I think Virginia Tech finishes 2nd. I think they beat Miami down there in South Florida. I think they do win 9 games. I think they finish 6-2 in the conference. But Virginia Tech, they returned 10 guys on defense, which is always a plus. And the Virginia Tech is built on defense and special teams, the old Beamer ball. Mm-hmm. My division champion is the surprise team of the year in college football. I got Virginia winning 10 games, going 7-1 in the ACC and making it to the ACC championship game. Bronco Mendenhall has come from BYU, and he has built himself a very sustainable program. Yeah. Now, Virginia loses some guys on offense, but they return 8 on the defensive side of the ball as well.
Mendenhall's always kind of been, his stable's always been defensively too.
Yep, and I think they've got some offense to build on that. I like Virginia to nudge out Virginia Tech in a very interesting, it's been like, I think 12 years since Virginia has beaten Virginia Tech. I think they get the Hokie off their back this year, and they win the division.
Well, since you just went with your number 1 and number 2, I'll go with my number 1.
Well, once you announce your 2, it's obvious who your 1 is. So
I hear you there. 2 for me is Virginia Tech. A lot of the same reasons you said. 10 returning starters. Bud Foster's still there. The defense is going to be fine. I still have a lot of questions about Fuentes as their coach there. He came as one of the typical hot names from one of the group of 5s that's got good offensive numbers. Hasn't been able to replicate it yet. Maybe this is the year. I don't know. I don't really see that, but I do think they're better than the other teams because of that defense, the special teams, just the culture of Virginia Tech. They're a better overall program historically, so I got to trust that sometimes in these kind of 50-50 tosses, so I go Virginia Tech number 2. My number 1 team, I have Miami. I really like them this year. Really, they had a top 10 defense last year, and they returned a lot of that. Manny Diaz sure it's his first year there, but he's been there for a while. He knows the players.
Knows the culture. That's
more
fair.
importantly, he had a top 10 defense, and he's the one calling those defensive plays. Most of those guys are back. I think they could very easily have the way this conference is, could very easily have a top 5 defense nationally. They have a lot of talent there. They do avoid Clemson. They get a favorable home schedule. They get Virginia Tech at home, Virginia at home, and Georgia Tech. Now, they do have to go to Pitt and Florida State. But I think they're good enough to win both those games. I have them winning the division. I do have them actually playing Clemson pretty close because I do think Clemson, without playing them in the regular season, the Miami speed is just different. And when that elite defense is flying around with speed and doing the things that Miami's historically done, they can be tough for anyone. I don't think they're going to beat Clemson. I don't think really anyone's going to beat Clemson this year, but I got them going to the ACC championship game, giving Clemson a hell of a game, but I think Clemson's going to pull it out in the end.
My concern with Miami is quarterback play, but I think that's a good point. Miami's
Best way to avoid having a not so great quarterback is having an elite defense that keeps you in the games. Quarterback doesn't have to do as much. That's what I see happening with them this year, basically.
Okay, so you think they'll fare better than they did 2 years ago when they went down there and got mollywopped by Clemson?
I do. I think that defense has improved more. Manny Diaz has had a great track record over the years of defense, and I think he's got it working. You don't have a top 10 defense that comes back with that many starters the next year and really take too much of a step down. Now, Malik Rozier was their quarterback last year, got hurt, got replaced, got a flip-flop. He's going to have a whole offseason knowing he's the guy, and he's going to have to show it, too. He's going to have a lot to prove.
It starts early, too. They got Florida right out of the gate.
A lot of people might have forgotten about this, but Tate Martell did transfer to Miami. So he's waiting there. If Malik Rozier wants to prove he's the guy, because I don't think he's going to be he's a senior this year. I don't think he is.
I think he's a junior.
I think he's either a sophomore or a junior. So he's going to have to prove that this is his team, because Tate Martell was one of the highest recruited guys in a while. It just didn't work out for him at Ohio State. But, I mean, you're talking about a guy there waiting in the wings who could potentially take you to the next level. Quarterback's going to have to say, this is my team, make his claim. With an elite defense, I think it helps. I just see it working for Miami this year.
That's fair. I have Clemson dominating Virginia. I think Virginia puts a magical 10-win season together. Their only losses will be, I forget who I had them lose. I think they had them losing to, like, North Carolina or somebody random in conference. Just kind of one of those games where I don't trust Virginia to win all these games, but I think they beat Miami and Virginia Tech. That's how I came to the conclusion of them winning the division.
All right, so that's kind of how we see the divisions falling out. Some closing thoughts here on the ACC. Obviously, we both have Clemson winning it, probably both undefeated all the way through, going into the playoff. Are they going to be, not to spoil our future play video, but are they going to be your number one overall team?
I have them as my number one seed into the playoff. Yes.
Same. I think that as well. Not much else really needs to be said. Really, any other thoughts on the ACC? Kind of, it's just one of those. It's Clemson's conference.
It's Clemson
right
and everybody else.
Yeah.
A lot of bowl teams in the ACC, so I think they'll have some chances to maybe up their quality going into 2020 with a lot of these teams making the bowl games. I don't think they have any other New Year's Six teams that will make a bowl. I think Virginia, even with 10 wins, will go to probably a second-tier game. They won't make it to a New Year's Six bowl, but it's Clemson and everybody else.
So what do we got next?
Next up, we got the Pac-12. So we'll see you guys next time. Loft Sports signing off.